Good morning. Based on the introduction and the theme of today, I've decided to change my little start of my speech from talking about moving on from data validation to the topic of data compliance. But I think we should theme it around, if we're all Harry Potter and his friends working together, then we can work together to conquer potential, what could be seen as the Voldemort of data protection and compliance. So that will be our theme from today. First of all, data protection and compliance is something that is a very hot topic now. It's something we shouldn't be shying away from. Digital marketers and those that work in data as providers, aggregators, processors, all scales and types here must engage to fully protect and ensure that there's continued creativity and innovation within our sector. I believe companies who embrace the change in regulatory environment, build trusted partnerships with consumers who are technically savvy now and know that we are tracking, targeting and delivering ads to them intentionally, can come out as strong leaders and winners in the space. The data privacy regulation is long established, or data protection is long established in Europe and elsewhere, but it hasn't been reviewed or updated for a long time, in fact for more than 20 years. And the GDPR, which is coming out, is directly addressing that. Data is a substantial update, and we must all educate ourselves. The regulation will come into full effect in May 2018. We can't avoid it. The e-cookie directive, or the e-privacy directive, is also currently being proposed for review in the European Council and Parliament, with the plan to come into effect at the same time. It will also be a regulation, so it will be directly transposed into law. So just quickly to summarise, there are 5 key updates that we should be aware of. First of all, the personal data definition. It clearly clarifies the direction of case law, stating that all online identifiers provided by devices, apps, tools and protocols will be considered personal data. Consent requirements. These are changing. It's no longer allowed to be inferred through notice. It must be given through affirmative action. That means opt-ins. Profiling, for the first time, has been defined. It's been clearly defined as any form of automated processing that predicts personal preferences, interests, and behaviour, therefore, and talks about location. And you must give information to users if you are profiling them. Geo-expansion. GDPR applies to all businesses that are offering goods and services to the EU. It does not matter whether you're based in the EU as a business or incorporated there. There's also equal liability now, whether you're a direct data controller or processor, you must comply fully with the law, and the fines are much higher, so you really want to pay attention and know you're exposed to risk. There are lots of other detailed changes. I kind of feel like this is a bit like class, see me after if you want to go into any of this in detail, because there's way too much to touch on today. But what I'd like everyone to think about is 2 questions. And the 2 questions are, what are you doing right now to set your business up for success in this new regulatory environment? And secondly, how are you managing your data protection risk? And here I'll hand over to the Media Trust and Chris. The Media Trust are focused on cleaning up the internet, including data risk assessment and management, and he's going to provide us with further insight. Chris.
Good morning. So clearly, Andreas, when he asked you this morning, what do you want first, the good news or the bad news, he must have answered the bad news, because that's GDPR and compliance. It's not everybody's favorite subject. What we want you to keep in mind is obviously data drives revenue. As Jackson mentioned, it's the new currency in digital, but it also introduces risk, whether that's data loss or data leakage, GDPR or the French DPA cookie compliance regulations, having your data used against you by voracious bots that are looking to pretend to be your audience to get valid impressions and steal payments. You're impacted by the misuse of data, whether it's your own or others, every single day if you're a data practitioner, which I think is the primary group here at this conference. So the idea that we can continue down this sort of 2 decades old Wild West mentality where everyone believes that your data is yours and the consumer, when you access them, wherever you access them, is yours, is really starting to change. And that's being driven by consumers who are upset and also by regulators that are looking to sort of take a better control over the internet and that activity itself. So we're not totally sure if you're there yet. Our marketing team at the Media Trust thinks that this is what you look like when you think about things like GDPR and other privacy requirements. It's typically not a very happy conversation, but what I think this slide does a relatively good job of is getting into the mindset of the people that we speak with typically in the industry. So the brand often doesn't think of themselves as a digital publisher, even though they have websites, they have apps, they're doing all sorts of data collection, and visitors visit those websites, right? So in our minds at the Media Trust, they are a digital publisher. They just may not think of themselves that way. In addition, the brand typically believes that the consumer that visits ESPN is their consumer. Obviously, the publisher believes that that consumer is theirs and that they're offering access to the consumer to the brand via some form of compensation. The idea of ownership of data and who gets to control what is sort of the typical mindset battleground where most of you are playing, if you're even thinking about that. The regulators are now stepping in and saying, no, none of you get to control all of that. You're going to follow policies that we are dictating because they believe that they need to control and manage helping the consumer. In addition, what you all need to keep in mind is with GDPR, and really we believe with regulation around the world going forward, is that there's 2 types sort of data managers. There's the data processor, so that's the user or the generator of the data. So that's any code running on a website. Typically that's not the website owner themselves. And in addition, there's the data controller. So what you want to think of in the data controller is the website or the app. Both of those parties are now responsible under GDPR law, and just about everybody in this room is either a data controller or a data processor. So your data people, just a couple quick slides to run through to show you how this actually manifests. Most of you have probably seen something like this in the past. I don't know why the marketing team selected Oreo. I don't think there's a pun here where, a real cookie that you would eat versus actually looking at cookies. Keep in mind that cookies aren't the only thing that impact GDPR or other regulations. It's just kind of an easy one to talk about. But in looking at the Oreo.com website, scanning from one location in the United States, so not around the world, not looking at lots of different behavior targets impacting the site. This is a clean scan over a 3-day period. The number of vendors on day one, so that's the number of companies present on the website, was 10. The number of domains is 19. The number of cookies that dropped were 12. On the second day, so this is just moving from one 24-hour period to the next, there were 13 companies present, 33 domains, and 13 cookies being dropped. So right off the bat, over a 24-hour period, we're looking at a reasonable dynamic change in what's happening on the site. So if you're a brand, and if you have a website, and visitors go to that website, whether you have consent or not, you need to be able to manage and understand that it's a dynamic environment that's out of your control. Oreo.com is one of the companies and one of the domains on the site, which means that 18 are third party. So I'm getting the hook a little bit. So looking at a bigger range, this is managing or monitoring the top 25 Alexa ranked websites across brands, e-commerce, and media. Media, think of ad-supported websites. When we look at this, you're looking at a much bigger average per day volume of activity. So 20 vendors on the brand sites, 82 average on e-commerce sites, 283 average on media sites. Obviously, advertising carries an enormous weight to the media execution. And so when you're thinking about GDPR compliance, whether you're the actual site who is responsible for all of that activity, or you're any one of the companies that renders onto the consumer's laptop or their mobile phone when they access the website, you are actually responsible. Okay? So again, just to kind of quickly recap here, consumers and then regulators are ultimately taking over at this stage. The industry hasn't cleaned it up for themselves. What you want to think about here, privacy, security, poor quality, performance, this is the rise of things like ad blockers, right? It's the rise of opt-out and all of these things that have happened over the last few years. The standards are coming, the regulation is coming, and 4 kind of acronyms or different things that all of you should know about. COPPA, Children's Online Privacy. GDPR, that's going to kind of encompass a whole bunch of different things with how you're able to use your data. Lean, those are standards around really advertising quality and what advertising is doing. And then the Coalition for Better Ads, which if they get their way is really going to start to clamp down on what you're able to do with the data and how you're executing with the consumer. So finally, a couple of things that you should think about and take care of and do. First, know whether or not you're a data controller or a data processor, or both. Understand who you do business with, both directly as well as your third and fourth party transactions. If you're a data controller, you're responsible for all of their activity. Essentially, you're inviting them to the consumer experience. And then finally, the 2 big ones: have a process for knowing your partners and how they're doing data collection. And then finally, actually start to show that you care, which means in addition to having that process, you're reaching out to your partners and you're actually taking steps to meet regulations. That's going to go a long, long way about 10 months from now in 2018 when this really starts to hit. And if you're showing that you're mindful, especially of GDPR regulations, that's going to go a long way when Brussels starts knocking on the door. Thank you.